For decades, Republicans in Texas have been making it harder for Texans to vote. They know that their best chance to hold on to power is to limit access to the ballot. Because when more people vote, our democracy is strengthened. And when more Texans vote, Democrats win. Now, Republicans are exploiting a global health crisis to keep people from exercising their right to vote. And we won't let them get away with it. Texas Democrats will never stop fighting to expand and protect access to the ballot. In order to turn Texas blue in November, we're committed to registering and engaging a new electorate that reflects the diversity of our great state. But if we're going to be able to win, all eligible voters in Texas must be able to cast a ballot and have that vote count. When it comes to voter protection, we've taken to the courts to challenge Republican voter suppression efforts. We fought Republicans' discriminatory voter ID law and won, and beat David Whitley when he corruptly tried to purge the voter rolls. We've also launched a year-round voter protection hotline, which is helping voters navigate the voting process from beginning to end. In order to get more Texans registered to vote, we've undertaken the most expansive voter registration program in our party's history. We recently launched registertexas.com to ensure that all Texans can register to vote from the safety of their own homes. We're also mailing hundreds of thousands of voter registration applications to unregistered voters across the state. Democracy works better when more people vote. Learn more about our voter expansion and voter protection efforts by texting ACCESS to 21333.
Hello, and thank you for being with us this afternoon, everyone. I'm Serita Fontanesi, the Black Constituency Organizer at the Texas Democratic Party. I am so excited to welcome you all to this week's Townhall Thursday, where we will hear from one of our incredible organizers and activists who's been leading some of the efforts to engage and uplift Black voters in Texas. Specifically, the Texas Democratic Party has launched an initiative aimed at engaging young Black male voters. And joining us today are some of the folks who have been involved. And first, we're going to hear from Sean Reid. Sean is a proud native of Dallas, Texas. Sean currently works as a field director for a Democratic Congressional Campaign. He also is the CEO of Impactful Touch public affairs firm. Sean is an active and engaged community advocate with a diverse set of experiences engaging in advocacy for underrepresented communities. Sean currently serves as the equity officer with the Dallas-Fort Worth Urban League Young Professionals. He is also an appointed member of the City of Dallas's Complete Count Committee, where he chairs the African American Census Consortium. So doing some incredible work in our DFW area and statewide. Sean, would you just like to take a moment to introduce yourself to the folks watching?
Thank you, Serita. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Again, my name is Sean Reid, and I am a part of the DFW Urban League Young Professionals, and I'm just excited to be here. You did a great job.
Thank you. Well, we'll launch in. Last month, the Texas Democratic Party contacted over 1.5 million Black voters all across Texas. How can we continue to build on that momentum and expand our outreach to Black voters, especially young Black voters, between now and November?
I'm so sorry. Repeat your whole question. My computer was having a glitches.
Of course, it's raining. We're all experiencing technology for a moment. Just mentioning that last month, we at the Texas Democratic Party contacted over 1.5 million Black voters all across Texas. How can we build on that momentum and expand outreach efforts to Black voters, especially young Black voters, between now and November?
Great question. And I think that was a great initiative that the Texas Democratic Party initiated. And I think the main thing the party can do is continue to engage with voters and people in general, and not only focus it around elections and a particular candidate, but focus it around issues as well. So I think a lot of young Black people want to be heard during these times. And it's a time to kind of tap into that and figure out what issues matter most to them, and ask them to help come up with solutions. Give young Black people a seat at the table, opposed to speaking to them, speak with them. And I think this is the time to do that, especially in today's climate.
Yeah, I really love the idea of speaking with them instead of at them, right? The best way that we get folks engaged is when they feel like they are actively a part of the conversation. And so thinking about that, we know that young Black men are such an important constituency that we really have to specifically engage for registration and mobilization. How can we empower and uplift our young Black men to register to vote and turn out on Election Day?
I think what you can do is just make it simple. And instead of thinking of federal and national offices, make it simple to them and really stress the importance of voting and how it affects their daily lives in the most simplest form. I think if we went about it that direction, we'll have a greater impact and much more result when it comes to speaking and engaging young Black men. And I think you have to also be realistic and just transparent with the system that we're working in, and not try to make it seem as if things aren't what they are. Just, call it what it is and continue to engage and figure out what issues matter most to them at that level.
Yeah, and Sean, I'm curious, as someone who works with the Urban League Young Professionals, who is active and involved in the Black community all across the state, I would love to just hear why you're involved and engaged in this work, especially as a young Black man.
Right. So I'm from Pleasant Grove and grew up equally in Oak Cliff, but originally from Pleasant Grove. For those who don't know, those are southern communities south of downtown where majority minorities stay, a lot of underserved, under-resourced communities. And growing up, I just saw a lot of disparities. At the time, I didn't know I was living in a disparaged community, but after I got older and really went to college, I started to see that a lot of the things we were fighting for, it wasn't just because I was surrounded by the people I was surrounded by, but it was really because of systems and policies that adversely affected Black people. So it really made me want to get into helping elected officials who share interests of mine get elected so we can have some allies inside systems to help push towards equity and things of that nature. So I think a lot of times in certain communities, we've known these disparities and we've known these issues to be for so long that we think that that's just the way it is. And it doesn't have to be like that if we had people who are fighting the good fight for us in every level of government. So that's kind of a little bit of my why. And I think it's a great opportunity to engage people and meet voters and meet people where they are, so they can participate in democracy and be more civically engaged.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I just really love hearing why people do this. Politics, especially Democratic politics in Texas, is not for the faint of heart.
Right. And it's the only way long-lasting change. Like we can do all these community service projects and these one-off services, and that's good and all, but we're only plugging an issue. If you want something that's long-lasting and has longevity, we have to have some kind of policy change. And the only way to do that is to increase voter participation, increase voter engagement. We just have to, get more people in on the boat. It can't just be me and you, Serita. We need a whole yacht full of people knowing about all of these issues. And as angry as I get when I hear things, I got to spread that information on to other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of the each one teach one. Once we figure something out, we got to make sure we're passing it on to the folks around us and our families and our communities. And thinking about that real community effort. We know Black voters are the backbone of the Democratic Party. Despite the political and socioeconomic systems that have been in place really for centuries, that have worked just as they were designed to disenfranchise Black communities. So how can the Democratic Party do a better job of actively fighting for the Black Texans who consistently show up for our democracy?
I think some of your answer is actually in your question, and you just have to rephrase it. I think the Democratic Party should consistently show up for Black organizations and for Black people in the community, opposed to just showing up on election years and during election season. So figure out how you guys can work more with Black organizations. And I think the Black organizations are there. You just have to figure out how you can maneuver and work with them and make it to where it's not like, I need you to do this, but how can we support you guys as well? I think if we stick to some of the democratic values and do that throughout the years, opposed to only doing it during GOTV between September and November, I think you'll build more of a lasting relationship. And then because you all have the knowledge, use that knowledge to help teach and train, organizations. Like, this is how it works. This is what these offices do. Like, in the downtime, inform them as much as possible. That way, when it's time to get out the vote and do voter mobilization, we're not trying to mass and inundate people with like education. We kind of have a basis of knowledge. So I think if the Democratic Party was a little bit more consistent in the Black community throughout the year, opposed to the fall months, it'll make a great difference. And showing up when people normally don't show up. I know, at least here in Dallas, I know that our older community, our more seasoned population, those who are 65 and older, have probably about 2/3 more voting power than younger people. But that's not an excuse not to talk to young people. Although young people traditionally aren't voting at rates of older people, don't just avoid them because they're not. Let's try to push those younger people to vote. And I think when young people vote, more young people and more diverse people vote, I think there's a greater chance that we'll have just a shift in up and down the ballot.
Yeah, and when we think about, okay, well, our young people aren't necessarily a big voting block, we have to ask why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because we're not reaching them where they are? Is it because we're not talking about issues that concern them or in a way that's accessible, right? I think often we get caught up in the kind of politico speech of it all, and people just want to know, how are you going to make my life better? How are you going to be engaged in my community in a real and meaningful way? And so thinking about that, we heard a little bit of your why, but I would love to hear, thinking about to 17, 18-year-old you having to decide when and where and how you wanted to get engaged in this. What is maybe something that you would say to that version of you, or to maybe some of the younger folks that are watching?
Thank you. I think I would tell myself and younger people watching here today is to just seek information and put yourself out there. I think when I remember the first time I showed up to like a school board trustee or meeting or whatever, elected officials and people are excited to see young people. I don't think that they know the best ways to engage or to interact with young people. So when somebody doesn't know how to interact or engage with me, sometimes you got to show them. So just show up and be willing to show whoever you're speaking with or you're wanting information with, just how to engage and how to treat you. I know that we are living in a disenfranchised system and things haven't been right for a long time, but God willing, we're all going to keep living. And if we're going to keep living, we should be doing something to make this world and our state a better place. So I would say, hold on to your passion, hold on to what it is you want to do, and try to figure out how you can best make a change in your community. And it's going to take some collaboration. It's going to take you gathering your friends and your family members and people your age, but it's also going to take you, I don't want to say reaching across the aisle, but it's going to take you speaking with some people of power or people who hold elected office. So it's going to take you having those conversations with those who are, 30, 40 years older than you without getting so angry to where you can't get your point across. So just get organized, stay engaged, show others how to engage with you, and stay passionate.
Yeah, it's funny. We started this conversation last night, and one of our panelists, Chris Hollins, who's the county clerk over in Harris County, mentioned that especially in those down ballot local elections, those are decided by literally handfuls, dozens of votes, right?
Right.
And he made a joke, but it was true of, if you just get your car full of folks, of your cousins, of your friends, of whoever, you could ultimately be deciding who wins that election.
Right. And that's power that a lot of young people don't see. And it's so much power knowing that you can decide who wins the election. And, if you really can, once you show an elected official that you have numbers, it's like they will always answer your calls and you'll always have a direct line because you organized 200, 300, 400 people to get out to vote. And they won a race by 100 people. So that's power in that. And that's one thing when I go to high schools, that's my selling point, because I say we can't do anything to change. And I'm like, do you know that your school board trustee, they only have like a voting universe of 2,500 people, 3,000 people? If you just got your entire senior class to vote, you can change who controls your school board seat. And school board trustees in Dallas, you have a $1.something billion budget. That's a big deal. Or even if you take it to the state level, there was a state race, and not endorsing anyone, but there was a state race here in Dallas for seat 100, where Attorney Jasmine Crockett, representative-elect, won by 100 votes. Like 100 votes in a district election. That's
that's huge.
I have 100 people on my. I get 100 likes on my pictures, on Instagram. So think about if you can do some type of challenge saying, "Hey, vote, show your picture when you vote." I don't know, just make up something. There's a lot of power in that. And I think a lot of times we just think national and think that our voice doesn't matter. And you hear a lot of people talk about the Electoral College. What about when there's not an Electoral College? There's so much more than the President of the United States. And a lot of times, we may not be the only ones to decide who's the president of the United States, but we can control a lot here locally in the state of Texas.
Right. And, this is our first year in Texas that we won't be able to vote straight ticket. So folks are going to have to actually go the whole way down the ballot and check every single person off. And we know that that is a form of voter disenfranchisement, because not everyone can spend the full 10 minutes in their booth doing the whole ballot, right? And that's part of why straight ticket voting was really helpful. But that being said, that means that your vote, especially in those local elections, especially in those city council, the judicial judge, I always tell folks, when we have these conversations around how do we change policing, how do we move towards a much more community-focused way, it's like, great, well, there are people in your community that you elect that make those decisions. They're your city council members, your sheriffs, your judges, your DAs, right? And so if we want this progressive and more inclusive and ultimately a community that is more reflective of young up-and-coming values, then that means we've got to hear your voice, and that's your vote in this instance.
Yeah. One of my, you didn't ask me a question, but one of my most proud votes, I think, this last few years was for Judge D.A. John Creuzot. It was so refreshing to volunteer and work and help a campaign with someone who had progressive ideas. And then on the back end, see him actually do the things that he campaigned on. And for those who don't know what the DA is, definitely, look it up and see what your DA is doing in your county. But DAs hold a lot of power, especially when we talk about changing the criminal justice system and reforming that and just shifting conversations and being more progressive. Our DA here in Dallas has done a lot of great work, but I won't make it a lot about him. But look him up, John Creuzot. He's doing great things here in Dallas County. But yeah, one of my most proud votes ever cast.
I love those exciting moments when you're really passionate about the candidate that you're voting for, which is also why I always plug for folks to work on campaigns, to find someone that you can feel really passionately invested in, to make that vote feel even more powerful. One of the questions that we got from the live stream from the audience was, how can we, both as a party and as a community, better support and build up potential leaders, potential candidates within the Black community?
Okay. I think it takes those in leadership to create a pipeline or something for leaders to come in. And then two, I think it's giving information to young people and giving them a starting point, whether that's a board and commission on the city council or whether that's just different fellowships. I know that CDP and a few other organizations have fellowships where individuals can learn. Don't make that to where it's just a elitist or exclusive opportunity for only those who have I've seen it before. You have to have at least 2 cycles of campaign experience. We're leaving out a population of people who really want to learn and who are missing an opportunity. Another big opportunity or chance to get involved for young people is precinct chairs, and that's elected to office. And I think that's a great place to start. For those who don't know, a precinct chair is someone who's kind of like a community captain whose sole job is to get out the vote in their precinct or their neighborhood. And I think it's very doable. It's very manageable for someone who's young, just starting their career and have a little time to volunteer. And then the skill set that you learn and how you learn to maneuver van and just the people you meet as a precinct chair can be very long lasting. But I think to answer your question, it takes young people stepping up and looking for opportunities like that, but also people who know of opportunities to just, spread it along, and for people who have been in positions to allow space for young people to come under their wing to learn as well. Did I answer your question, or did I just talk?
No, that was great.
Okay.
To your point, it is equal parts mentorship and just going for it. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten was stop asking for permission. And politics is very much, right? Politics is very much a world that feels like there's gatekeeping, there is mysticism into it all. But ultimately, it is just folks who are really jazzed about something related to the way we do things. And that can be anyone, ultimately. So if, to unsolicited advice for our folks at home watching, if you are interested in getting involved, if you are interested in learning more about how to run for office, how to manage a campaign, right? You don't always have to be a candidate. You can be making sure that the right candidates get to where they need to be. just look around in your community and see like who is doing the work that I admire, who maybe looks like me, thinks like me, sounds like me, whatever, something that I can feel invested in, and see what's available and see what's out there and, earn your worth. Like look, it's 2020. We don't have to be working for free anymore. Like
I agree. Man, there's so many, and to talk about, just putting yourself out there. I remember when I first started getting my charger, like, no. I remember I sent some emails to some people here in Dallas, and I normally wouldn't do anything like that, but I made the ask. I was like, hey, I'm passionate about X, Y, and Z. I'm looking to do X, Y, and Z. Do you have any space for anyone to help out with your team and things? And I already had a small relationship with Senator West, but he responded, he has this policy thing that he's doing. Would you like to help research some stuff? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I think a lot of people won't help. It just takes, you have to ask on our end and put yourself out there and kind of say what you can bring to the table at the same time, and make them see the value and the asset that you really are. But like, the help is needed. There's so much work to do out here that like, I wouldn't turn down any help. So if you want to help on the campaign I'm working, like, come out. If you want to help out the DFW Urban League, like, there's so much work to be done. The work is plentiful. So, hit me up if you guys are looking to get involved with a campaign. We have all different aspects of campaigning, from, digital organizing to marketing, PR, field, finance. And then if you want to do some work with a nonprofit organization, the DFW Urban League and Professionals has a lot of opportunities to kind of engage in some policy and volunteer work. So just make an ask. We'll pass the work along. Trust me.
The work exists, y'all. Don't worry. Yeah. Like, anytime someone's like, I need something to do, I'm like, I've got 10 options for you.
Right.
And I think there's always work to do.
I'm laughing because I had a call yesterday morning at 7:30 with somebody who was interested in joining something. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna send you all these links. And at the end of the call, I have pointed her to like lead something. She's like, hello, I just wanted to know what I could do. But she was on the call. I was like, hey, are you free at 5? And it was like 4:30. And she was like, yeah, I'm free. And she gets on the call and there's a lot of other people. And I was like, yeah, you're leading this for us now. Thanks for stepping up. So
I mean, that is a classic story though, right? Yeah. Like, I kind of was just calling for some information and now I am running a meeting. Okay, great. Right. We're going to go with it. I think a lot of this work is fake it till you make it. And, I think one of the very few kind of silver linings, if you can call it that has come out of us being so quarantined for a while is that we're really leaning into the virtual and digital space. So while you might not physically right now be able to get somewhere or be somewhere, you can still participate, you can still be involved. We do virtual phone banks, virtual text banks. Look, I have been promoting the old school phone tree. Pick 10 people in your world, in your life, call them, make sure that they are registered to vote. If they're eligible to vote by mail, they get that application done. And then make sure you guys all have a plan to go vote. Early voting starts October 13th. You don't have to wait until November. But, just really thinking about if we as a community can focus on, what can I do in my corner of the world, big or small, then that has big, meaningful impact.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap things up, our last question, and we've started talking about this, how can folks listening get involved and make sure to mobilize and energize young Black voters?
Right. I think the first thing you can do as an individual is go to your county's elections department and make sure you're a volunteer deputy registrar. So unfortunately in Texas, anyone can't just register anyone. You have to go through a small training, and the training's really easy. It's just making sure that you know the rules and laws to register people to vote. So you want to be able to have your card that gives you the authority to register people on site. So I'll register someone at dinner. Like if I eavesdrop and hear somebody talking about anything at school, at work, no matter where I am, I keep voter registration cards in my backpack, in my laptop thing, like I always in my car. So I'm always on the go and ready. So I think that's the first step. And then you can either go the individualist route or the organization route. So you can look for an organization to plug into, like search people on Instagram, social media, just send them a DM and they will respond to you with opportunities. Or if you want to do the campaign route, campaigns need a lot of help. It's not easy running or working a campaign. There's always work to do, especially for Democrats here in Texas. So if you have time, I strongly encourage you guys to find a campaign to work on this cycle. Like, you can say you can only help in October. Trust me, it'll be something for you to do. So you can do that route. In the meantime, when it comes to voter registration and things, every person registered counts. And one of the reasons why I say go with an organization, just because of the follow-up phase. Like, yeah, it's really good to register voters, but if those voters don't get out to vote, and if they haven't ever voted before, they may need a reminder. So if you want to take that additional step to make sure that they're getting out to vote, then kudos. I think that's a great job. But when you normally work or partner with the campaign or an organization, they kind of handle that follow-up piece. But if you wanted to be an individualist and register voters, that's great. Find places where people go that, normally, like my organization's been to barbershops, beauty shops, to chicken joints, barbecue places, we go to a Cash Saver, which is a store in southern Dallas, every weekend to register voters, and certain individually owned 7-Elevens. Just use your network to figure out where you can go to register voters. But as you're doing it, I was like, think of an idea to kind of mobilize those people. Like, you want to you want to push them to the polls. So, if an organization has a pledge card, then do the extra steps. Hey, can you also complete this pledge card so we can remind you to get out the vote? So that's important too.
Yeah, I really appreciate the idea of follow through, right?
Mm-hmm.
We as individuals involved in this work make sure that we follow through with our voters and they get there come election day, early voting. And then also I like to remind folks, like, you can follow through with your elected officials, hold them accountable. You remember your vote is powerful and it means something. And that means that you get to remind them of that if they're not showing up the way that you need them to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's especially important when we talk about young voters, because, there's a little bit of, I don't know, does this matter? Is this a thing? Whatever. And it's like, yeah, you get to hold someone responsible, like to make sure that they do their job by voting. And if they don't, then you get to pick someone else.
Right. And there's so much power in that. One thing that I do as a voter is I send emails to our U.S. senators, to people all the time, and I expect an email response back. I'm like, okay, you have 72 hours to get back at me, or I'm going to email you again. And they typically do and say, I at least acknowledge and saw your email. That way you have some kind of record that you reached out to this person about X, Y, and Z. I email Ted Cruz and Cornyn like at least once every other month, if not multiple times per month, but in the nicest way. That way, when it's time to organize people around them, I have this long thread of emails that I can say I've emailed them, they haven't done this, and you can kind of push for a change in their seat. So sorry for cutting you off, but just
no, it was for look, anytime we can talk about getting receipts and having them ready to go, I'm here. I just wanted to say, Sean, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I also would love to thank all the folks that are watching along with us. And as always, thank you everyone for your efforts and engaging voters, especially our young Black voters, and making sure people are turning out for early voting and election day. Next week, our People with Disabilities constituency organizer, Alejandrina Guzman, will host Townhall Thursday and moderate a discussion during the Disability Week of Action. So be sure to tune in next week at the same time. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.